Hi everyone, it's Kerry. I've been really excited about this project. I actually started it about a month ago, but I've only just been able to get around to showing you how I did this now. I love the look of wax seals on projects, like on the back of letters and things like that, but I didn't have the little metal seals, or I didn't have the wax and the little melting pot or any of that sort of thing. So I decided to have a play around with some supplies that I did have, and these are the faux wax seals that I've come up with. I'm going to show you how I made these. You'll need some supplies for this project. So you'll need a hot glue gun and some glue sticks. You'll need a heat tool that just blows warm air or hot air. And you'll also need some embossing powders. Now I'm using the Lindy's embossing powders, and these are available in my shop and also from the Lindy's Gang website, so I'll leave links to both of those places below. I really like the two-toned embossing powders for this project, but you could probably use anything. And then you'll need some stamps or tools to put the marks into your wax or into your faux wax. So this is just a rubber stamp that I already had, and then these ones are just metal gears, that like little metal gear charms that I've stuck onto the top of a spray bottle lid, and I've just stuck it on with a little piece of 3D foam, double-sided 3D foam, because when I press down it gives me a little bit of give. It's not so firm. And then these ones are just some homemade rubber stamps that I had. Now you can probably use any stamps and you can probably use any embossing powder, but if you're going to try this with your own stamps, I'd suggest that you try it just with a small piece of your stamp first, just to make sure that it doesn't affect your stamp, because you don't want to ruin your stamps. So you'll also need some baking paper, and I've got this piece of wood here just to protect my tabletop from the heat. This is just a piece of contact, so it would melt with too much heat. So to begin, you just take a piece of baking paper and some hot glue, and you're just going to make a little blob of hot glue, and you probably need to try this a couple of times until you work out what size you need for your stamp. I need about 1.5 centimetres. Now I'm going to use my heat tool directly on top of the blob, and that's going to spread it out a little bit and also make the edges look a little bit raised. You do need to be fairly quick with these next few steps, so I'll explain it as I go, and then I'll fill in the gaps and tell you anything that I've missed after the fact. So once you squeeze your glue out, you quite quickly want to apply the heat straight on top. You can see that's spread out my glue and it's given me the raised edge. And then you want to apply your embossing powder straight over the top. Now the glue, if it's hot enough, will already start melting some of that embossing powder. I just tap onto my piece of wood to make sure that the embossing powder has gotten all around the edges where those little raised bits are underneath. I don't want it to be, any gaps around the edge. And it can sit there for a second, that doesn't matter. And then I have a second piece of baking paper here, so I'm going to tip my excess embossing powder off onto this separate piece of baked paper, but keep it a little bit away, because if you hit that with the heat gun, it's going to go everywhere. So then I just apply my heat gun again straight over the top of my little blob of glue. And you'll see that that melts my embossing powder, and then you quickly need to apply your stamp straight over the top. And when you pop it down onto the glue, you don't want to push down too hard, because that will make the glue split and the embossing powder won't have full coverage of the glue then. So you're really just pressing it down with enough force to give it a light impression, and then you just leave it to sit on top of the glue until it's cool enough. if you try and pull it off too quickly, the glue will actually stick to the stamp. So you can just let that cool and it will come off very easily when it's ready. So we can make another one while that's cooling down. I find it's also better when you're making these to work with one colour embossing powder and make as many as you want in that colour and then change colours. It just saves, you know, tipping everything out and then popping it back. So I'm just going to see if that's ready to come off yet. Okay, I'm going to set this to the side. It's come off the baking paper. Just while I tip this extra embossing powder off. And then I'll heat this one again. You can tell when your embossing powder is all melted because it will be nice and shiny and smooth. So with the metal one, I'm just popping it down and applying just a very small amount of pressure just so that I get the impression in the surface of the glue. So whilst that's drying, I'll see if this one's ready. Yep, so that's just popped off straight away and there we go. Cute little wax seal ready to go. So the advantage of doing, or one of the advantages of doing these this way is you can store this now and then you can use them, you know, later on when you're ready. So you can make a whole huge batch of them and then just apply them as needed. So the metal will actually absorb some of the heat from the hot glue gun, so be careful if you touch the metal, it might be a bit hot. But it's the same thing, when it's cooled enough it'll just pop off of the hot glue and you don't get any residue left on the metal there. So that's another one ready to go. So once you've got a bit of a stash of your faux wax seals, there's several different things that you can do with them. So this one here, I've highlighted the detail with a little bit of gilding polish. You could use metallic wax and just brush your finger over it once it's cool and it just highlights the detail there. You can of course use these as you would use a normal wax seal on the back of an envelope. One of the advantages to using a hot glue seal is these are not going to crack like a wax seal might. These are quite durable. So durable that you can actually punch a hole in these once they're fully cooled and set an eyelet into them. So to do that you would just take your wax seal, and I've got a crocodile here and I'm just going to line that up and punch a hole. Punches through really easily, and I'll just select an eyelet here and pop it into the hole. Now when you set the eyelet, you don't want to press too hard, so you really just need to apply enough pressure to actually set the eyelet. You don't need to squish it too hard. So there we go, that's in there now. And then you can hang that like a charm off a book or pin it onto your project like that. And I just think that's another, you know, cool way to use these wax seals. They look really cool. Anyway, I hope you're as excited about this project as I was. I'd love to see any that you make. If you've got any questions, please leave a comment below and I'll be happy to help you out. If you're in Australia, I do stock the Lindy's embossing powders in my shop and I'll leave a link to that below. Lindy's, of course, ship anywhere in the world, so I'll also pop a link below to the Lindy's Gang website. Anyway, thanks for joining me today and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!